Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles here, who check in with the second shortest odds to win the division. You see plus 230. I thought 2-1 off the top. So you can still get plus 230 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, I think that this is the bet. I don't think that they're as good as Dallas, but if we're looking for a bet here inside the NFC East, plus 230 is not bad. I don't think that they're Super Bowl contenders at 30-1. I don't think that they're going to win the NFC East at 14-1. I just don't see it. But this team has improved. There's no question. I think they're the most improved team inside the NFC East, and we'll roll through some of their statistics from last year and talk about some of the pieces that they acquired through the draft and in the offseason. So let's start here offensively. They were 11th in total DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. They were 14th in pass DVOA. They were 3rd in the NFL in rush DVOA. 359 yards per game, just in the middle of the pack, 14th overall. Actually, that should say, 359. 200 right on the button, passing yards per game, 25th. So not a team that really dominated through the air. Let's be honest. This was a team that ran the rock, and they ran it really well. 159 rushing yards per game, number 1 in the NFL. 26 points per game, number 12. Defensively, they struggled, and they struggled quite a bit. 25th in total DVOA, 25th against the pass, 18th against the run. 238 yards allowed per game. The 10th fewest overall. It's like, wow, they allowed the 10th fewest. 220 passing yards per game, the 11th fewest. 107 rushing yards per game, the 9th fewest. In the middle of the pack in terms of points allowed per game, 22. But this is where they really struggled, in my opinion. Like, it was a new regime, right? I mean, everybody was gone in Philadelphia. They had the youngest coaching staff across the board. They were the only team in the NFL that had a coach, a head coach, and an offensive coordinator at 40 years and younger. Nick Sirianni, it took him a little bit to kind of get going and feel this offense. For the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, Jalen Hurts was right there with Tom Brady in terms of dropbacks and passing yards, or passing attempts. Not passing yards, passing attempts, but he wasn't very accurate. And they didn't really have a lot of options to go to, right? There was a little bit of Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Both tight ends got hurt at times. Zach Ertz was shipped off. Dallas Goedert had missed some time, so they were rolling with like 3rd, 4th string tight ends for a little bit. They got nothing from Jalen Reagor, just a complete disappointment from the draft. I drafted him over Justin Jefferson. It's been years in Philadelphia figuring it out, right? They passed on DK Metcalf. They passed on Terry McLaurin. They passed on Tyler Lockett. They passed on Devontae Adams. They passed on Stephon Diggs. They passed on so many really good wide receivers over the past couple of years for guys like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Nelson Aguilar, Jordan Matthews, Jalen Reagor, right? They just haven't been able to figure it out. They got one in DeVonta Smith. They traded a first-round pick this year, and they got one in A.J. Brown. We'll get into that stuff in a little bit. But the biggest thing for me was Rich Gannon try to figure out this defense, and I thought he did a decent job towards the end of the season. We'll see what he can do in year 2 here. But 69.4 completion percentage against a quarterback completion percentage against the Eagles, number 1 in all of football, right? They couldn't stop the pass. Darius Slay had a phenomenal season. He was one of the best corners in football last year. He was absolutely fantastic. They had really nothing on the other side, and they weren't really getting any pressure on the quarterback. They were in the bottom 5 in terms of sacks. Fletcher Cox couldn't get any pressure. They just could not get any pressure on the quarterback, and ultimately that hurt them. So key losses here for the team: Brennan Brooks, Alex Singletary, Rodney McLeod. Key additions: A.J. Brown, big trade, and locked him up to an extension. Hassan Reddick, huge addition to get some pressure on the quarterback. And then James Bradbury, cornerback as well. Last year had a good season for the New York Giants. They let him go. The Eagles signed him. The Eagles also signed Zach Pascal, who isn't going to do a whole lot, but it's not great news for Jalen Reagor, we'll say that. So ultimately, I think the Eagles had a fantastic offseason, right? The trade with A.J. Brown, I think it's fair to expect maybe a little bit of a dip in production for A.J. Brown as we can get into some of the fantasy targets and see where he is going. He is going as wide receiver 10, ADP 28. I just feel like if he was a member of the Titans, he would just be the guy there, right? Just the go-to guy in Tennessee, A.J. Brown, right? No Julio there, and a run-first team in Tennessee, but Tannehill would just feed him. A run-first team here in Philadelphia, but you still have DeVonta on the other side, right? So I don't know. This price, I just feel like it's a little steep, to be honest. I think he's a terrific wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to be... Like, we have some free tools over at ftnfantasy.com, air yards tools, and air percentage, target share, ADOT, all that stuff. And he had a 45% air yard share and he had a 22% target share. I think he can get a 22% target share. I just don't know if he's going to have a 45% air yard share. I don't know how much Jalen Hurts is really going to chuck the ball. I think the game plan is still going to be the same, to lean on arguably the best offensive line in football. FTN, we have them ranked as number 1. And I think they're going to run the rock. I think he's going to be the go-to guy. I think Smith is going to get some as well. And I think Dallas Goedert is going to get some. You see Miles Sanders. You see Kenneth Gainwell. Sanders going as RB30, 0 touchdowns last year. Get into him in a little bit. ADP 84. Kenneth Gainwell, rookie last year, had a lot of touches inside the red zone. Could be an issue for Sanders, but ultimately Jalen Hurts, who led the NFL in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, he really is the goal line back, a.k.a. Running back on the squad. DeVonta, wide receiver 37. Dallas Goedert, tight end 9, ADP 90. So let's get into Hurts. Let's get into the wide receiver position here a little bit. So I actually don't think I have much more to add from A.J. Brown. I kind of view him as a bust. Honestly, I think he's going to have a fine season. I think he's a terrific get for Philadelphia. It's exactly what they needed. They needed an alpha wideout. And for Smith on the other side, who had a really good season as a rookie wide receiver, I think he's a terrific route runner. I wouldn't be shocked if he returned value. I don't think a lot of people want him because they look at this offense and they say, okay, they're going to run the rock. Jalen Hurts is not that accurate of a quarterback and they're not going to throw that much. So how can Smith get his? And I do believe the first read probably will be to A.J. Brown. But Smith is going to be open quite a bit. To me, he passed a lot of eye tests. He went up against a lot of top corners, and he won a lot of routes. He didn't have a lot of touchdowns, didn't have a lot of massive games. There were some quiet games from him for sure, but he had a really good season as a rookie facing top corners. It's just not going to be the case this year. You're going to have that top corner on A.J. Brown, so you could see DeVonta Smith kind of 7-11. Open 24/7. It's possible. But how many targets will he get? He may only get 4 or 5 a game, right? That's going to be an issue. I view Jalen Hurts as a guy that probably chucks the ball 20 to 25 times a game. AJ maybe gets 7 or 8. Smith gets 5. Goddard gets another 5, and then you just got random dudes, 1 or 2 here. Quez Watkins, maybe Reagor gets 1 or 2. Backup tight end gets 1 or 2. A couple out of the backfield. I just don't view this team as a team that's going to chuck the ball quite a bit. So I think I'm out on A.J. Brown. I'm probably out on DeVonta Smith, although he's, you can make a case for anybody in best ball. You could easily stack up these Eagles if you get A.J. early. Then you can get Hurts, you can get Smith, you can get Goddard. You can stack them up. But from a redraft standpoint, I think the only guy that I want in the Philadelphia Eagles is Jalen Hurts. I think he is going to improve as a passer. I think having A.J. Brown certainly helps him. We talked about the offensive line. We have them ranked as number 1 in the NFL. I certainly am drinking the Kool-Aid. I love to hear that he's working out with Tom Brady in the offseason. I like to hear the positive reports from Nick Sirianni, Dallas Goedert, getting the ball out a little bit quicker. I do believe in Jalen Hurts. I really do. And from a fantasy standpoint, he was quarterback 6 in points per game, tied with Aaron Rodgers. He is going to continue to run. You have a nice rushing floor there. If he could throw 20 touchdowns, he could finish as quarterback 2 or 3 overall, and I would not be surprised. The rushing floor is there. He's going to average about 40 rushing yards per game. It's like starting with a touchdown, and then you have the addition of A.J. Brown. I think that's positive. I really like this Eagles squad, honestly. And those that know me, I follow this team pretty closely. Last year, I didn't like the squad. I'll be honest. I'm not just liking the squad every year. They were surprising last year. They surprised a lot of people, myself included. I did not expect them to make the playoffs. But I like the additions. I like the draft. Jordan Davis was a great pick. Nakobe Dean was a great pick. He fell. I liked their draft. I liked the addition of A.J. Brown. Like I said, it's exactly what they needed. They have picks and draft capital next year, too. If Jalen Hurts isn't the guy, they can get into that quarterback draft and maybe draft themselves a guy. I thought they had a terrific trade with the New Orleans Saints as well. Dallas Goedert, I think he's a really good tight end. It's just like I said, I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of pass volume here. I think that's a steep price. Going in around Dalton Schultz, I'd rather have Schultz as a guy, linked to Dak and the number 2 target for Dak, and Dallas Goedert could be the number 3. I just don't feel like he'll return value. So for where he's going, even though there's not a lot of great tight ends on this squad and he is the guy, if they didn't have A.J. Brown, I'd really, really, really like myself some Dallas Goedert, but ultimately that's not the case here. So for Miles Sanders, we'll quickly wrap up here with Sanders. Only averaged 8.7 fantasy points per game over his first 12 games, but he churned out 754 rushing yards and 5.5 yards per carry, was tied for second. Actually tied for second with Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. Sanders only averaged 11.4 carries per game under Nick Sirianni compared to 13.6 in his previous season. Having said that, like I said, Sirianni started to give him more carries as the season went on. He scored 0 touchdowns. He did get one in the playoffs. I think he's just essentially free here. Why he's free is because of Jalen Hurts, and he's going to get touches in the red zone. He's going to steal goal line touches. You got Kenneth Gainwell in there as well. But if you start your draft wide receiver, or get a running back or RB in the first round and just hammer home wide receivers, I think that Sanders is a decent guy to grab in the 8th or 9th round. And he just recently came out and said, don't draft me in fantasy. It's just the way the offense is run. Get your 2 or 3 points. Clearly he's unhappy with his usage. But who knows? Maybe they run him into the ground. This is the final year of his deal. I don't think the Eagles are going to extend him. Doesn't make sense to extend him the way that they use him. He's going to get his. They're going to run the rock. He's going to get his. I think he's going to return value. I think he's a decent target. Like I said, if he's sitting there in the 8th or the 9th, don't go into your draft with Miles Sanders on your board as like a target. He's going to frustrate you at times. Like he shouldn't be a target of yours. But if he's going to fall outside the 8th, the 9th round, and with these recent words that he said on a podcast, don't draft me, the way the offense is run, people are going to move Kenneth Gainwell up their boards where I think he's overvalued and Sanders is going to be undervalued. I think he's a really decent target in round 8 and 9. I view him kind of like Melvin Gordon as a guy that you can roll out as your RB2 as a flex in an offense that's going to run the ball. It's going to be a top 15 offense. Maybe he can get you 12 to 15 fantasy points per game. I think that's okay. Better suited as a flex play as an RB2. Oh, yeah, Hassan Reddick. Wanted to just mention him as just maybe the defense can be a little bit better from a fantasy standpoint and just getting pressure. So 11 sacks last year and 23.5 sacks since 2020. It's the 5th most in the NFL. The Eagles finished 31st in sacks with 29. So Reddick is a really, really strong addition. Let's roll through their schedule and just kind of see where I have them. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if you agree as well. Leave it in the comments section and just get your thoughts here. So week 1 at Detroit. The Lions are a tougher team. I view that as a W. Maybe they lose their home opener against Minnesota, so they're 1-1. Into Washington, a win, so that's 2. Jacksonville, a win, that's 3. Arizona, I give them the win, that's 4. I did give them the win against Dallas. That's 5. Wow, I don't expect them to really start 5-1, but here I am. I'll give them the loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers, still at 5. Win against Houston is 6. They'll lose that second one against Washington, still at 6. Into Indianapolis to take on the Colts. We'll give them a loss there. They're still at 6. At home against the Packers, maybe that's another loss. They're still at 6. A win against the Titans. A win against the Giants. So we're at 7-8. A win against Chicago. 9, a loss against Dallas. They seem to play the Saints really well. They've beaten the Saints in each of the past 2 seasons with Jalen Hurts. There's a win, and then wrap up against the Giants. So I got him at 10. Oh, it's right there at that number, 9.5. I think they can get to 10. Here I am talking about them as decent odds at plus 230 to win the division, but ultimately when you roll through this, I do like Dallas's schedule a little bit more. So it will be tough for Philly to take that division.